Although George Dewey is forgotten today, in 1899 he was equivalent of a rock star.
Hey guys, Teeple here. Today we're going to be taking another look at the Vanguard. This is post-buff. The ship was buffed actually fairly significantly on the update that introduced the French cruisers and fully released the German battleships. I do have Cunningham. There's my build that I was playing for both of these games. I'm planning on fooling around with him a little bit, so keep that in mind, but I think both of these games were shot in that configuration. Just quickly, while we're executing an opening turn here, the buffs that the Vanguard received increased the muzzle velocity from 804 to 836 meters per second, so the shells are traveling faster. Max damage AP increased from 11,700 to 12,500. HE damage from 5,300 to 5,800. Fire chance went up from 34 to 38. Turret traverse got quite a bit of a boost, 5 degrees a second to 6 degrees a second. And the rudder shift on the B hull is down to 14.7 from 16.2. So everything, I mean, well, not everything, but a lot of things dramatically improved for the ship. Now, I didn't have a problem with the ship before, but it had to be played extremely carefully, and if it wasn't played extremely carefully, you would die. Now, that's still kind of the case. The main problem people have with the ship is a very large citadel, so if you're inclined to point the citadel at guns that can punish you, you will die. I've seen Vanguards get one shot. I can't remember if I've one-shot one myself or not, but either way, I mean, you'll see in both these games the amount of time that I spend pointing full broadsides at targets that can punish me for doing so is minimized to the best of my ability. And that's always been the key to this ship, but the increase or the decrease on the rudder shift time dramatically helps it. You got 11.8 compared to like an Amagi 17.3. These are the base stats, 15.6 on the Iowa. So that's a significant difference. And the increased damage output is good. You know, it's definitely not going to complain. I haven't looked at in depth on any sort of charts or anything. I suspect the improved muzzle velocity could impact shell penetration, especially at distance. I don't know anything about that. That's just my own speculation, so don't take that as gospel. But you can see here, I mean, the ship's capable of dishing out quite a bit of damage. We got 60k pretty much right off the bat by the time the first kill is secured, which we're able to do. And, you know, this thing can definitely punish you. You don't want to underestimate the Vanguard. But just, I mean, keep an eye on my diagram for pretty much the entirety of these two matches, because the armor angling is the key component on this ship. I've heard people say the armor sucks on the Vanguard. I don't find that to be an issue at all. If you're angled properly, you're going to take some damage, but you're not going to get smoked. I mean, you're going to take some damage on any shot when you're angled properly, or any ship when you're angled properly, so it is what it is. I mean, here we're undetected, and I'm kind of executing a bit of a turn, so despite being fully broadside there, it's not an issue. And we're able to eliminate the Amagi for the second kill, and just shy of 100k. Now this first match is very quick, as you'll see for certain reasons that shall become apparent shortly. But not having access to the armor view currently, I don't know this for a fact, but I mean, the British battleships, kind of one of the main things about them is they're really heavily armored in the front compared to like USN battleships, which are really heavily armored in the sides and really weakly armored in the front. I mean, so they're comparatively heavily armored on this. I think they're all kind of like medium to above medium average all the way around the ship in terms of armor, as opposed to, you know, like the USN battleships, again, for comparison. It's like really heavily armored in the areas that count, i.e. the belt armor and on the sides of the ship. So if you're angled properly, you can outduel anything. I mean, here this Iowa, I'm squared up against him, and I'm kind of opened up, attempting to maybe get this back guns firing, but now I'm just closing it up here on this nice tight angle here. You can see we essentially took no damage there, and you can outduel Iowas, you can outduel any ship properly angled in this thing. What I'm basically trying to do until someone else kills them is just knock these guns out and maybe get, if you miss that shot, you can hit the superstructure and get some damage that way. But parked in, you know, nose in on these ships, give it a 10-degree angle or whatever I'm at right now. You know, so imagine the shell coming, you see that white dotted line at that diagram? That's where the shell would be coming to my ship. You can see how steep of an angle it's going to be hitting that ship. That's basically out of bounds territory. And there's really not much these ships can do when they're hitting you in the sides of the ship on the armored part. All they can do is hit your guns to potentially disable them or shoot superstructure. But a lot of players aren't experienced enough or don't have enough knowledge to understand that those are good targets to shoot, and they just kind of get flustered. They'll either just turn away and leave you alone or run away, you know, and try and find someone else to shoot. You can see that Iowa turned his guns to find someone else as he was waiting to die, trying to get one more salvo damage in. And that's just, no offense to that player, but we were just outplaying them, and that's something you can definitely do in this. Prior to the buffs, you know, you could outplay Iowa's Amagis in this manner just by understanding how to work the ship. But the Vanguard requires knowledge of armor angling and a lot of kind of core battleship mechanics, which is why people that went down the British battleship line right off the bat really had a hard time with the Vanguard. And if you're still not really comfortable with a lot of these core mechanics that are going to allow you to excel in these duels with these situations, the Vanguard's still probably not going to be a particularly easy ship. Now here we're facing the dreaded Bismarck secondary, and we blast them for Citadel. I mean, my problem with the Tirpitz is well documented. I'm not 100% sure if the Bismarck has the same problem or not yet. I don't think anyone knows. I mean, if the devs happen to see this, or maybe I'll point it out to them and confirm or deny, but that's not a long-range shot. And again, these Tier 7, these German battleships in general are supposed to be impervious to Citadel damage, so maybe if someone wants to point that out to one of the devs and see what they have to say on that, or you know, I think there's plenty of evidence available at this point. Anyway, we'll talk more about the Bismarck here in a few days when I get a video up for that, but that is why you don't spec out a secondary build. Whether that guy had a secondary build or not, what did he do 100 damage on me? I don't know, maybe. And I understand people want to build secondary builds to keep destroyers away from them. I get the idea, but look at the damage you're doing with your main guns compared to the secondaries. I mean, it was completely irrelevant, those secondaries. So anyway, that's the first game, and that's a pretty good look at it. This next one's a little bit longer. It's more of a traditional non-route situation. If you don't understand why we won there, it's because their score went below 0 as we killed one of those ships. So that's called the mercy rule, and you know, that's otherwise known as a shellacking. Now here we have a game on Trident, another capture the base mode game. Now my opening move with the Vanguard and a lot of these tier 7 battleships is to execute a turn. When you want to do that depends on the map. You need to have a little bit of knowledge on when you're likely to get detected. Some maps you can sail forward a little bit and then execute a turn or whatever, but being rearward facing allows you to still accelerate while not pushing into the enemy. So you want to be able to have your ship in motion. That'll give you more control to open and close your firing angles, potentially dodge torps or shells or whatever you need to do. Whereas sitting still facing the enemy, you're kind of stuck where you're at. You can't really do anything immediately, and then if you do get kind of forced to move forward, then you can't turn without exposing your broadside to people that are likely to be able to shoot you. Whereas if you execute the turn right off the bat, that will allow you to expose your broadside briefly right now, but ships are loading their guns. They're not really focused on me yet. It's still a risk. Sometimes, you know, once out of 20 games you'll get shot right off the bat, which sucks, but you know, it's a lot less laughable than backing up all the way to the edge of the map like certain ship pilots tend to do. But anyway, I just feel like being in this kind of a position right now gives you a lot more control over that, and I would recommend it. And again, focus on this diagram here. We're going to be identifying threats to the ships. And yeah, when we're getting shot like that, we're getting a little bit of damage, but nothing that we can't mitigate. Now the Vanguard has a major heal. It's 573 per second over 28 seconds. Compared to like the Iowa 360, a Magi 331. So that's another feature of the ship. That was buffed the first time the ship was buffed. You know, so I think it was pretty strong to begin with. I don't have any recollection of what it was, but the heal's great. You can potentially build around Jellicoe or even Takagi, you know, boosting the heal on these ships and make them even tankier if that's the route you want to go. There's a lot of options with the Cunningham build. If you have Madden and Cunningham, I'd probably use Cunningham, but I don't have Madden yet 6 months into the game, unfortunately, so I'm not going to comment too heavily on his performance. But again, being rearward of this, these ships on the enemy team, they're pushing into me, so I'm not really getting to the point where you can see on my map, I'm just kind of keeping them towards the edge of my firing range. And when I'm out of the firing range, that's when I can execute a turn. Now, there's a lot of destroyers in this match, which will keep you spotted. One of the downsides of the Vanguard is it's the shortest range on any battleship that's currently in the game. So you do need to account for that. Just because you can no longer shoot at the other battleships, they're likely to still be able to shoot at you, especially the Iowas, which can shoot all the way across the map. So keep that in mind before you execute your turn. I mean, basically the key to the Vanguard is managing your turn. If you can keep it to 1 citadel or less that you take per game, then you should be able to survive for quite a long time. You know, but what I'm doing right now, I'm checking for available targets, seeing what the situation is, but I'm noticing that, sure, I'm spotted and whatever. I'm just kind of seeing who can shoot at me and what the odds are that they actually will. If you can look at the guns, see who they're pointing them at, that'll help you. But I'm trying to wait until I'm reasonably sure that this turn is safe, and then I can kind of turn back in and get back into range, and then reacquire a new angle on some of these ships and continue to look for broadsides. So, you know, it's, again, the key to the Vanguard is do not get shot in the side. If you can play it that way, especially with the damage boosts, you can put up some monster games. I mean, again, I just played 2-3 games, whatever it was, with this, and they're both, you know, not world record damage games or anything, but nothing to sneeze at. So, in fact, we're about a third of the way into the game in terms of the timer, and we're already at about 75k. I hear the Bismarck was kind of sneaking out. I'm just going to launch a couple shells at him. Now, again, I'm being spotted the entire time because there's a lot of destroyers. As long as you're aware of them and you don't get too close, you can manage the threat to those targets. Again, more shots incoming, and because we're angled at roughly a 45-degree angle, we take a little bit of chip damage, but it's nothing that we can't deal with. And keep in mind those heals will heal a lot of the non-citadel damage. Heals do 10% of damage taken to your citadel, so keep that in mind. If you're getting shot in the citadel, that damage is essentially permanent. If you're getting shot elsewhere in the ship, it's, you know, a lot of times it's considered medium or light damage, and the light damage is the damage you can heal, and like fire damage is considered light damage. So that's why you don't necessarily want to damage con a single fire, because that damage is essentially 100% healable. Same thing with these shells that were taken well angled. It's not considered catastrophic damage. We can heal a good chunk of it, and it's not doing much damage anyways because most of the shells are bouncing or not penetrating. They're shattering against the angled armor. So, you know, at no point in either of these two games was there really any threat to be sunk. But, you know, always be aware of the map. Now they're deploying the, everyone you know, imitate a black hole and sit in the one spot on the base, which you can, if people, if you're not, if for some reason you play the strategy all the time and then you keep dying every match and then you quit before you figure out if you're winning or losing, this is the typical result. You're going to get your ass kicked every time, or 9 out of 10 times. As long as the opposing team doesn't S the bed, you are going to subject yourself to multiple firing angles. Look at the map. We have guys to the west, we have guys at the center. You know, we could potentially spread out to the east and create all these different angles, and these little guys that are balled up into a wad, how are they going to angle their armor against 3 different attack points? It's impossible. So no matter what you're trying to do, if you're tightly bound up together, I never recommend battleships bunching up together, because again, it's very easy to defend against all of them, but you're also not creating those crossfire situations for yourself. So it's a double whammy being balled up like this, you know. Like, I can angle against their entire team, they can't angle against my entire team. So there's 2 major problems right there, you know. So I know I talk about it a fair amount. I'm sure most of my viewers don't subscribe to the black hole theory, but if you do, and I guess just keep an eye on how often you're winning those games. I mean, I definitely could be wrong, but in my experience, teams that bunch up in the base against teams that don't very rarely win the game. So that's my advice in that one. Turpets here, again, all we're really doing is looking for broadsides, and all we're really doing is making sure that we're not pointing the broadsides at who can return fire to us. So the most exposed angle I have is going to be, because I'm firing out of my right side, that's the most exposed angle I want. I'm essentially, you know, 5-10 degrees, whatever it is, at this Iowa, and I'm essentially pointed nose in at whatever that battleship is to the left. None of these ships can really do anything to me, you know, and all you got to do is work right to left, or if your guns are pointing out the left side, work left to right. Or if you need to attack an inward target, like let's say I would need to attack that left-hand battleship for whatever reason and the Iowa's still around, then I need to execute a full turn to the left and start pointing my rear toward the Iowa, and then have my guns pointing off the back right towards this ship. I guess it's a Scharnhorst, it looks like. So what you don't want to do is open up your angle just barely enough to fire at the Scharnhorst, because then I'm basically fully broadside at the Iowa and assume that Tirpitz was still there. Both of those ships have very, you know, easy shots. I mean, a lot of times I see people choose, like, a lot of times people choose to attack the Scharnhorst even though those 2 ships are still alive. For whatever reason, maybe this guy's low health and they want to get the kill, or who knows why. You know, I don't know, frankly, what's going through a lot of people's minds when they're playing the game. But I'll see them do this, and then as I'm watching them, I'll just wait for them to execute the turn, and then we'll just eliminate them from the game. It's very easy to do. So, you know, just, you want to be able to angle your... this battleship play is all about armor angling, really, and not getting too close to destroyers. So I think I might trim this here. The rest of the game is just me chasing this down. I think we get another 16k damage just whittling him. He's doing a decent job of angling at me, but I'll post the score here so you can check it out. So all in all, the Vanguard post buff, I think it's very strong. It still makes you, it forces you to play well, because if you don't play well, you're gonna die, which I appreciate about that ship. It kind of makes you focus, and then you tend to do pretty well. So if you play it right, you can do quite well in this thing. I hope you did enjoy the Vanguard look, and I hope it did help you guys. If you did enjoy the video, please hit the thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, you should consider subscribing. I got a lot of World of Warships coming all the time. Questions for me, comments, leave them below. And we'll see you guys all later. Alright, peace.